Let's move on to Kate. Much appreciated. Kate from Tender, you're on.
Hello. I'm going down a slightly different track and have a presentation, but please do chip in with questions at any point. My tech is awful, so I believe Mike is really kindly going to share the presentation for me. Um, so, just wanted to kind of set the scene of who we are, really. So, if we could go on to the next slide. Um, please. Oh, skipping forward a couple there. There we go. So Tender is a domestic abuse and sexual violence prevention charity. So we're looking at quite a specific area. We've been around for over 20 years, and we deliver creative, healthy relationships workshops with children and young people in all settings. So we work with them from primary school upwards, anywhere there are children and young people, we will go. And we also deliver training to adults, and we work with parents as well. We work across the UK in quite specific areas of the UK at the moment. And we use our USP is that we use drama and creative arts to explore healthy relationships. So that creates a really safe space, it enables really open conversations, and it's a way of kind of rehearsing relationships and rehearsing scenarios and rehearsing for real life. We've got a real portfolio of work. Um, our core model is a 2-day healthy relationships model. So we work with a group of 30 students over a period of 2 days to look at themes such as consent, pressure, unhealthy behaviours in relationships, seeking support. And then a whole school approach model which involves us delivering work in the school over a period of a year. So we work with the entire school community over that period of a year and deliver workshops with children, young people, with parents, with teachers. We do small group work. So the reason I talk about those models is we're not just a specific boys and young men organisation. We work with mixed genders generally because we generally work with a class across the school group. Sometimes that will be in single gender settings, but within our reset whole school approach model, we're being asked more and more to work with boys and young men groups within those schools. Particularly on topics such as misogyny, online harms, pornography, and how they feed into healthy relationships and healthy interactions within that school. So as a result of this, we've worked to develop a 1-day positive masculinity. We are one of the organisations that say positive masculinity plan. So being able to work with those boys and young men specifically, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. And we've also developed a teacher inset session on the specific topic of misogyny. So like I say, these topics are coming up more and more. So it's really important that we're able to hold those conversations effectively when they do come up. If we could pop onto the next slide, please. I know it's quite small here, but why is this work important? I didn't want to just fling a load of stats at you. The problem is huge in terms of violence against women and girls. As Chris was saying earlier, it's an epidemic. So there are huge amounts of stats, and I'm not going to read these out to you or reel off a load more. I think what I did just want to put into context is that often when thinking about violence against women and girls, people think of it being an adult issue, domestic abuse being something that happens in the home between married couples. And actually, the impact on children and young people is enormous at the moment. We know that statistically, 16 to 25-year-olds are at the most at risk of domestic abuse. And like these statistics show that I've put up here, a lot of it's happening within the school settings. I think the one that I think is really important is that first statistic, which is half of children and young people saying that the fear of violence or violence is impacting their daily lives. And I think that's definitely something to pull from, is that daily lives is an enormous problem. The knock-on effects in terms of interpersonal relationships, in terms of how they're interacting with their teachers, with their peers, in terms of their mental health, their well-being, educational attainment. This has to be a problem that we're tackling, is how we can make these spaces safer for children and young people. So, like I said, we create these safe, supportive, creative spaces where we can have these conversations. If we could go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of messaging for boys and young men, statistically, we know that the majority of violence against women and girls is perpetrated by males. So that means that when talking about this topic, there can be a general fear that actually, oh, we shouldn't open that box because we're going to demonize boys and young men. We're going to create feelings of inevitability for them, or blaming them for violence against women and girls, all of the things that Chris was just saying in terms of how, what can be the tricky things with this topic. We don't go in with that angle. We believe that boys and young men are part of the solution. We have to have them on board in terms of tackling violence against women and girls for it to happen. It's a huge problem, and we've got half of the group of people that we're talking to out of that picture if we're demonizing them or making them switch off on that topic, as Chris was saying. So our goal is to make sure that children and young people, including boys and young men, feel empowered to make a positive change in the world. So we're giving them the knowledge and skills to become, we call it healthy relationships ambassadors. So we're giving them that kind of empowerment and feeling that they can go on and be like, actually, this is not right. I can be better. We can all be better, and we can all support each other to be better. And it's like Chris was saying, it's about meeting them with compassion and removing that shame and blame so that actually they are feeling like it's not a hopeless situation. And I'll talk a bit more in a moment about the specifics of what we talk about in the programme. In terms of harmful messaging, I mean, we could go on for ages with this, but I just wanted to talk about very quickly those external influences, online misogyny, the manosphere that we touched upon, or that Chris touched upon briefly. It's too huge a box to open, but we are really noticing in schools that the impact of that is enormous, both in terms of what children and young people want to talk about and how the issue is broached. And in terms of messaging within the schools, I think it's really important that organisations like us and other organisations present are coming in, because schools often don't know how to tackle this. And I think there are huge issues with things like banter. Is a word that we often have to unpick because it's dismissed by teachers as, oh, it's just banter, or it's just boys being boys. So I think without the training from skilled professionals to understand how you can unpick that, it becomes a bit more of a huge issue to tackle. I'm really conscious of time, but I'm just skipping up. Oh, sorry.
May I ask a question? Give you a second to breathe for a moment. There's been some reported educational classes or learning in Wales in particular around asking for consent during sex regarding choking. Is this the sort of thing that you would expect healthy relationship ambassadors who work for you to be hearing in a school? Is that something you would expect to be being taught? And you talked about what men and boys might be picking up as the norm. Is it the sort of thing that you have heard?
It's a topic that's sadly coming up more and more, and even in primary schools we're getting disclosures of young people in primary schools talking about choking, so they've clearly been accessing pornography or have heard about it from other people. It's not a topic we broach specifically in our programs, but if any conversation comes up that's around topics like that, we will broach it. And like you say, it's around when we are talking about any of these topics that involve consent or non-consent, we're talking about gaining active consent from people. So yeah, it's a topic that does come up. Does that answer your question?
That's scarily does, but thank you.
Yeah. So just very quickly in terms of the programme itself, if we could move on to the next slide, please. So our positive masculinity programme, like I say, we deliver it ideally as part of our whole school approach, because it needs to be that the whole community is talking about these issues rather than just kind of working with one small group of boys and young men and kind of expecting them to be the solution. Within this programme, what we're looking at is a lot of our core content is around healthy and unhealthy behaviours in relationships, power and control, gender expectations. They come up in a lot of our work, but actually within these sessions specifically, we're talking a lot more about stereotypes. We're talking about victim blaming and perpetrator excusing attitudes, so how language can really inform conversations around this. And I think what's really important is the soft skills, and I feel a bit odd about that term because I think soft skills can sometimes diminish it, but actually I think those soft skills are the really important ones. So around empathy, communication, self-esteem, confidence, emotional regulation, we have a real focus on that in terms of boys and young men really tapping into their emotions and how they can feel more empowered to have these conversations. And then we're also getting them to be very active in creating a campaign to share their learning with their peers. And again, that gives them that kind of sense of being a healthy relationship ambassador within their school. We've had some lovely examples of this where they've created raps or posters or scripts. Some have done podcasts. So it's just giving them those tools, I suppose, to be able to have those conversations and to challenge things. If there's time, I've got a case study of one school where this has worked really well, but I'm conscious that
Yeah, let's bring Mark in. He's got a question, and I'm sure we'd like to hear about the case study. Mark, do come in.
Yes, thank you. Just a question, if I may. I mean, how do you tackle a subject of teenage boys who are subject to partner or relationship abuse from a fellow female teenage partner? So, looking at the Youth Endowment Fund research, 57% of boys had said that they'd been a victim of physical violence from a partner, which was more than girls. Also, 31% of boys said that they were afraid of breaking up from their partner because of the consequences. 20% of girls. So, how do you address teenage boys who are victims of partner abuse from teenage girls?
It's a good question. So because we're a prevention organisation, we're going in at that kind of early end where we're looking at healthy early warning signs and healthy behaviours generally in relationships. We do get disclosures within our workshops, so there will be in pretty much every workshop that we deliver, there will be whatever gender it is, disclosing that they are either in an unhealthy relationship, have experienced it before, or are worried about something. We then follow the schools. We have a disclosure process, and we follow the schools. We refer it onto the school. So in terms of dealing with specific incidences, we don't deal with them directly because we're a prevention organisation. Where it comes into the conversation, we tend to open it out. So it's not looking at any gender specifically in terms of the attitudes and behaviours that underlie it and how you can seek support and how you can support a friend. It's about bringing everyone into that conversation, like I was saying before. I'm conscious of time. Shall I do the case study, or is it time to move on?
You have 2 whole minutes, so go for it, Kate.
Wonderful. I will. Thank you. There's just the final slide. I think we've gone back onto the first one there. So the case study I just wanted to talk through is a secondary school that we worked with in Norfolk. There's a very small picture there, but you can see some of the students that we worked with. They did our whole school approach program, which is where we work with the school over a period of a year. And what our facilitators noted from the very beginning was that there were some very harmful attitudes being expressed by some of the boys. So they'd clearly been exposed to quite extreme views online about women, about gender expectations. So our workshop leaders realised that was something that we needed to kind of tackle quite specifically with this school. So we worked with the school to identify exactly where these influences were coming from, and did quite an in-depth study on that. And then the school began a really integrated program alongside us with students, teachers, and parents looking at promoting equality and healthy behaviours. And what I think was lovely about this is that they came up with some really creative approaches to this. So they did a misogyny in the media presentation for staff. There was a mentoring system set up with some vulnerable boys from the school. And then they did a whole school assemblies involving all genders and a whole school positive male and female role model competition, which I love. And the teacher wrote to parents and embedded it really across the whole curriculum. What I think was really impactful with this, and why I was talking about healthy relationship ambassadors, is that now there's been reports of that the boys openly challenging sexism within their schools, so they feel really empowered to have the language and skills to be able to identify and also challenge it. But also it gets better. They have now partnered with a local primary school where the teachers were noticing some early unhealthy attitudes from some of their boys and young men, and have set up a mentoring program with that primary school. So those boys now really feel empowered to become ambassadors for those younger students in the primary school. They've set up it's a competition around their football sessions, and are looking at positive role models and how they can be positive role models for those young boys doing football. So I just wanted to end on that as a kind of example of when we get it right, it really, really works, and it has huge ripple effects further down the line. So as Chris was saying, it's a big problem and it's going to take a while to unpick, but we do have that ability to do that, and I think we've shown that in the work that we do. Thank you.